Become a Prime member today by visiting iloveblackpeople.com and receive our free I Love Black People t-shirt, Black Survival Guide, and become a part of our I Love Black People network, which comes with a global safety toolkit, nomad health insurance, Pan-African certification classes, and so much more. Go to iloveblackpeople.com now.
All right, welcome. And this is a little moment that we can share. And just thank you for joining me on this journey. And wanted to kind of go over some things that have been going on, I guess, in the media, as well as happening in so many of our worlds. This whole Kwame Brown, and then there's another guy, Kevin Samuels, and again, none of these people I know personally, so none of my comments are in any way coming out of a personal acquaintance or relationship, but just want to just talk about overall impression. I think one of the things that Kwame is talking about, Kwame Brown, is that the corporate media that controls most of what we hear and say make it legitimate to attack certain people, and you can't attack other people. And it oftentimes incentivizes attacking people who are the most vulnerable, who've gone through the most trauma. I think one of the ways we saw this popularized is in the Jerry Springer shows, where you would see Black people, and you would see poor white folks and their trauma being used for entertainment. Who's the daddy, and all these things that were going on, and people would laugh. And I really didn't appreciate this, or I started appreciating this a few years back. I was literally on a train in Amsterdam, or on the way to Amsterdam. I was in the Netherlands, and they had on the train, they had TV, and they had the Jerry Springer show. And I saw how they portrayed these images of these poor white Americans, and this is an international audience all over the world, showing these folks, and they looked so horrible, and the things they were dealing with were so painful. But literally, this show, the Jerry Springer show, was literally capitalizing that, and he was using his intellect in many ways to ridicule and make fun of these folks at their expense. And I look at what some of the things that we see now, where it's oftentimes in the corporate news, or media, it's not even giving us any news. It's people's opinions. And some of these opinions are said in ways that are very painful in the way they portray folks and portray people. And then also you notice that even the people who say they're helping folks, they're doing the so-called help in a way that you would never accept in your personal life as being somebody being thoughtful. And you give people power of a microphone or access, and they treat people a certain way, in a way that minimizes their humanity, then it even becomes more problematic. And as it relates to us as Black people, I think white supremacist ideology continues to traumatize us anyway. We're literally dealing with trauma every day, just of that extra burden of this white supremacist ideology, this system that we have to cope with. When I see people elevated, as Kwame Brown said, to attack or to scrutinize in ways that become very dehumanizing, you can say there's a connection here. And with basketball players, it wasn't until recently I got a greater understanding of what sports are used for in this modern era, to influence as a way of using power. Sports are not. It's not a benign thing. It's not about athletics. It's not about being strong. This is entertainment. This is a way that people use to manipulate, to distract us from the issues that we face every day by giving us entertainment. And and those who are in power make a lot of money from literally watching us run. And they contribute very little to this enterprise, but we include everything. We include our lives. So when you see an athlete, they're literally, their whole life is being used to benefit someone else and in some way maybe benefit themselves. Kwame Brown is just speaking to how, out of all the things that commentators could be talking about, to talk about a 18-year-old high school student being drafted number one over 20 years ago, with all the incredible stories that are very relevant that could be told, that story being told the way they did probably was just mean, could have been bullying, but it doesn't really speak to the context of what actually happened and what continues to happen today, as many of our people are exploited, not just in athletics, but exploited in so many ways. But yet the scrutiny doesn't go to those who are the aggressors. It goes to those who are the most vulnerable, and they get scrutinized and they get vilified in many instances. I just think if we're going to really be helpful to each other, there's a way you talk to people when they're going through troubles. And there's a way that you talk to people if you're just trying to clout chase or trying to aggrandize or make yourself feel better about who you are at someone else's expense. And what we notice is that there's rewards. The media will reward people who attack other Black folks. But you're not going to see those same people able to give that same vitriol or that same intensity on white folks. They're going to be, they can't, there's like a fine line of who you can address in those aggressive ways and who you can't. And so if we're going to be really clear about what we're seeing in the use of corporate media, be it social media or being broadcast media, there's certain behavior that is rewarded and keeps being pushed that is very harmful, psychologically, socially, to many of us. And in some ways, Kwame Brown is speaking out against it. Now, you may disagree with the words he uses or how he uses them. I think there's a time to be hot and there's a time to be cold. I think his tactics for this particular moment may be appropriate, may be most appropriate, because he seems so brilliant in the way he's handling this. So in order to bring out the behavior that he's talking about, I think in some ways he's inciting it to show and to illustrate by their behavior, because he knows what they're going to do next. And so hopefully in that way, he reveals something that has been hidden right before our eyes, and maybe we can change it. And if you listen to what he's saying, it's not about agreeing with everything anybody says, including me. That's if I use curse words, or I don't even say, call people the N-word in public or private. I don't do that. That's not how I was raised. But I'm not going to let that behavior not allow me to critically analyze what's going on. I'm not going to be so turned off by something that I can't use reason. But and then the Kevin Samuels guy, I only watched a brief part of his thing. And again, going back to the Jerry Springer, I think you could talk about Black relationships in ways that are helpful, and you can talk about Black relationships in ways that may not be as helpful. One of the things I learned, and this was the hard way, is that just because you know something, that's not enough. People don't care what you know until they know you care. And the way you see this is almost clear that these people don't care. There's a way that you talk to someone when you care about them, and there's a way you talk to them when you really don't care. And we don't have to get a PhD in sociology to know that. You know that almost instinctively by the way it makes you feel. And I think, going to Tuskegee, the hands, the heart, and the head, Booker T. Washington talked about, you know in your heart when something sounds off, and your heart is very powerful. I had uh, uh, Mr. Fenty, Adrian Fenty's dad, tell me. He said I used to say the head was the most powerful part of your body. He said, no, it's your heart. You didn't get married because of your head. You got married because your heart. Your heart is the strongest part of your body. So yes, sir, you're right. With that being said, I think it's important that we also look at the fact that we need to be the ones that get more vocal about, being kind and working with each other and helping us heal from the trauma that we experience every day from white supremacy ideology. And even we look at what's happened over in the Middle East with the Palestinians and the Israelis. Historically, we're clear that there are groups of religious groups in different places that have been persecuted and harmed for all kinds of reasons, including, like I said, being Jewish, or there's been people who've been persecuted for being Uyghurs, all kinds of persecution out here. And we need to be sensitive to it. And it's not enough to say we care, but we need to show we care too when we talk about it. And again, I'm not speaking from somebody who's always done it right. I think it's about trying to do better sincerely. And the same thing goes for militarism and the killing of the folks in Palestine. In apartheid South Africa, the apartheid regime called the ANC a terrorist group. And the United States actually had, even well up until uh, Mandela was president, the ANC, the African National Congress, was still considered a terrorist group. And again, when you're oppressing people, the state could be the military, the government, and then the people who are being oppressed could be just organizing militias or whatever they call them. In many instances, they end up calling them terrorists. Some people call them freedom fighters. But what happens is not a balanced environment. So what you'll see people when they're acting out, and I'm not saying, again, justifying violence at all, but clearly, if you look at the conditions in which the occupied territories in the Middle East are existing in, it is not a very humane, in any stretch of the imagination, environment. And people under those circumstances, when peacefully protesting or all types of protesting, there will be people who will come in and say, "Look, violence is a way." And I try to make an analogy, and this is may not be a good analogy. So this is a part of not trying to be too smart or try to act smart. When you have groups like Hamas, when the Palestinian government doesn't have a real armed forces, these people who are willing to do things to show that they are willing to defend the people can sometimes get clout for it, will get credibility. It's just like organized crime in some ways. And this, again, this is in many immigrant communities, they become the enforcers because they're the ones who are willing to stand up and hold people accountable. It may not be, and of course, it's not always the best way, but it is something that we've seen occur when there is imbalance between those in power and those who are not in power, that they will reach out to some ad hoc group that organizes themselves as a key enforcer. So the Palestinians do not have a regular army. The people who are fighting allegedly in these positions are folks who've been called terrorists, Hamas, who receives funding from Iran and other actors in that region. The conditions that people live in that are oppressive should be changed. And once you change that, I think their choices change and their decisions change and their behavior changes. And what ends up becoming a conflict can actually change. We have to understand that as American taxpayers that literally fund so many resources in these other countries, literally our tax dollars are about to be used to help rebuild Palestine after 11 years. 11 days of being bombed with weapons that we help pay for. This listen to what I say. We help pay for billions of dollars of munitions and airplanes and other military platforms to be used to bomb in Palestine or the occupied territories. And then now we're going to come back with aid. If the Palestinians do what we tell them to, we're going to actually give more of our tax dollars. And of course, the people who get rich from that are the defense contractors, the military industrial complex, and then the folks who get contracts with the government to help build. And it probably some American contracts. So the money that we oftentimes think is going to other countries, even in the case of Israel, is literally going in the pockets of American businesses in the context of giving aid. So we have to be more as mindful as we are with domestic policy as we are with foreign policy, because they actually oftentimes are part of the same story. And we need to be able to leverage our concerns to understand that these things are connected, to hold people accountable for murdering George Floyd is real. Understanding that the police system and the military industrial complex are all connected in the behavior domestically and internationally gives us a context that we need to be holding all ourselves accountable for the behavior of our government, which is supposed to be for the people, by the people. And these things are being done in our name. When they train police that end up murdering us, they're being trained in our names. When we train our brothers and sisters to go overseas in Afghanistan or Iraq or any of these other military bases that we have throughout the world, all the special ops and undercover bases that we don't even know of, all these things are being done in our names, with our family members, with our tax dollars. We should be vigilant about all of these things. And we can agree to disagree, but whatever your agenda is, make sure you're clear what that is, and and hold yourself accountable to be engaged in that agenda, because that lets us know that what we did last year in November was just one part of the puzzle. So often we hear people talk about voting or who you vote for. Voting is probably okay. Register to vote is important. Okay, so you can participate. Voting is important so that you can leverage that power. But most of your time is going to be spent engaging and influencing and holding people accountable. Election day, election cycles happen one day at a time. Well, they have, extended voting, but those actual votes happen and our elections happen one day. You're elected. I don't care if the person you voted for or against or didn't vote at all, you have to understand that this process involves you being engaged. If you voted or not, your tax paying dollars are going to be used. This system doesn't even care if you vote, really. But if you don't pay your taxes, they'll send you to prison. So the people who make a big deal, and it's fair to make big deals of all these things. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but the people who talk about who voted for whom, that is a part of the conversation, but just a part. The question is what we're going to do after whomever gets elected. That's if Trump, Biden, or anyone's elected. What do we do? Because after that election, we're going to spend 4 years doing something or 2 years doing something. Those somethings should be things that hold people accountable. If you look at constituent politics, people in different constituencies, no matter if the person who wins looks like them, follows their faith, their orientation, they're held accountable. As a Black community, we have to do the same thing. It doesn't matter who's in office after the elections is over, it's over. Now we have to live a life, and our tax paying dollars are still being used. Our names, our value, our citizenship is still being used. We have to take control of that every day that we wake up by holding ourselves accountable and those who profess to be actors and represent us. But that holding accountable is something we should do starting with ourselves and with an agenda, with a list of things that are important to you, and making sure you're holding yourself accountable to do those things and those who profess to represent you and are using our money. So again, this system, if you vote or not, this system, be it the corporate media, we have to hold them folks accountable. I think Kwame Brown and what he's done is held people accountable for what they've said about him and what they do every day. And we'll see how far that goes as it relates to changing the landscape. But I would say it seems as if Kwame Brown has held himself accountable to say something, to do something about something he thinks is wrong. And I think humbly, not knowing him, but his vantage point, someone who spent 12 years in the league, being the first student, high school student ever recruited as a first round draft pick, maybe the only. These things give him a level of credibility that at least warrants being listened to, I think. And the fact that others have used him not for the unique insight and understanding he must have as an 18-year-old in the NBA 20 years later, but people have used that as a way to ridicule and to belittle people. And that level, and they want to call that, I think that's violence in itself. But if they don't want to call that violence, we definitely know that's not nice. So again, I just want to be clear. I just want to, add these things to the dialogue and conversation that's been on the minds and things I've heard people discuss. And I think it's very relevant that we choose kindness, we choose accountability, we choose truthfulness in a way that helps us, almost like therapy, to deal with a situation where we're under amazing amount of pressure with the pandemic of racism as well as the COVID. And if you really love us and we really love ourselves, we would do our best to exhibit that love in even the things that are critical in what we say. So I think it's very important. We're thankful. And also just want to give a last little piece with what we're doing with I Love Black People. Please, let your friends and family know that we're literally building a movement to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia. And if you want to help protect our community, please sign up, become a member. Sign up, be a part of what we're doing to protect Black people from racism and xenophobia, and help keep your family members safe. These are things that are super important, and we can't wait for someone to come save us. We have to save ourselves, and we are the ones we've been waiting for. We can leverage technology to do it now in ways that we never could have done before. Our concept in actually providing this level of protection leverages the concept of the Green Book that Victor Green started back in the 30s until the 60s. And we've taken that and made it digital and have given people a way to identify safe places in no matter where they go in the world, so we can move about fearlessly when we're vulnerable in a situation like we need healthcare. We have information about that, as well as if you're someplace new and you're looking for a great place to go where they'll treat you with dignity and respect. So again, thank you all. Thank you everyone who continue to be so supportive. I just wish I could just say everyone, through all the ups and downs that we all go through, the only thing that's made this life most bearable are the wonderful family and friends and my lovely wife and all the folks that made it happen for me through university, through business, through bankruptcies, being kicked out of universities, all kind of things that have happened. It would have never been as bearable if it wasn't for the love of so many friends and family and the support of God and our ancestors interceding on our behalf. And just want to, keep, all of us in prayer and keep us all, motivated to make the day better, not just for ourselves, but for our children as we pay forward. Because I wish we could pay back, but we say pay forward. So with that being said, again, co-founder Sinclair Skinner, host of I Love Black People. I am because we are.
Become a Prime member today by visiting iloveblackpeople.com and receive our free I Love Black People t-shirt, Black Survival Guide, and become a part of our I Love Black People network, which comes with a Global Safety Toolkit, Nomad Health Insurance, Pan-African certification classes, and so much more. Go to iloveblackpeople.com now. Special thanks to Banneker Communities.
Greetings. This is Nana Akua Zenzele, natural healer, priest, and queen mother with over 20 years of experience, coming to you today with our healthful hint. Today's topic is boosting your immunity with colloidal silver. Colloidal silver is a natural antibiotic which has properties of healing or destroying bacterial, viral, fungal, and parasitic microorganisms. It's also an antiseptic and an anti-inflammatory. Colloidal silver is noted as killing up to 650 different pathogens in a short time without negative side effects. This is certainly a substance that I include in my natural medicine chest. How colloidal silver works is that antibiotics usually only attack one site. Bacteria can adapt to one site attack and develop resistance. Colloidal silver or silver ions attack anywhere around the bacterial cell wall so that the bacteria cannot adapt and develop resistance. Therefore, colloidal silver is a very powerful and potent antibacterial. There are many uses for colloidal silver, both internally and externally. Internally, I personally use 1/2 teaspoon to 1 teaspoon in an ounce of water for bronchitis, allergies, colds, flu, pneumonia, and other various infections. Also, colloidal silver can be used as a throat gargle for sore throat or a mouthwash for teeth and gum health. Externally, we can also use colloidal silver for eye washes, which will help with pink eye. Colloidal silver is one of those remedies that is excellent, and I use it often in my home, and perhaps you should as well. And as always, before taking any supplementation internally, please consult your healthcare professional. And as always, I bid you good health